So, what was your branch of service?
I was in the U.S. Navy.
What was your highest rank?
I was in the E5, second class petty officer.
And what general locations did you serve?
I served in, well, first I went to boot camp in Great Lakes, Illinois. I went to training for my rate in Pensacola, Florida. I served, my first duty station was Virginia Beach, Virginia, and I also was on a ship in Yokosuka, Japan.
So from the beginning, what made you enlist in the Navy?
Well, originally I had tried to go to college, and I did horrible my first semester, just totally flunked out. Decided that I was wasting my money if I wasn't going to be serious about school. So I talked to my dad. My dad was in the Navy, so he pretty much put that bug in my ear that I should consider the military. And since he knew so much about the Navy, it was pretty much an easy choice to go with the Navy.
Where were you living at the time?
I was living in Danbury, Connecticut.
So tell me about going to boot camp. What was the experience like?
Well, when I first showed up, I just thought about what an awful mistake I had made. It was just immediately getting screamed at and not knowing how to handle it. There was a man, I think he was a chief, I can't remember, but I think he wasn't really an RDC or anything like that. He was just working there for administrative purposes. But I think he saw how flustered I was and how just like the look of regret on my face. And he just talked to me for maybe 30 seconds just to be like, calm down, you got this. And then I was like, all right, you know. And then after that, it was, P days were rough. The first week it was a lot of adjusting, but you adjust really quickly. And it's not as difficult, I think, as people anticipate it to be. The first week, yes, but after that,
just briefly explain what RDC is.
Recruit Division Commander. So I guess same thing as like what a drill instructor, or people would imagine a drill instructor to be, basically in charge of our division.
Briefly explain what a P-Day is.
P-Day is processing days. So that's the first week where you're filling out all of the paperwork, you're getting your uniforms, you're figuring out where you're supposed to actually be living, what compartment you're supposed to be living in. It's basically just getting everything in order before you actually start training.
So can you describe the company or however they break it up, your people you were training with?
Okay, so I was in a division. Everybody's broken up into divisions, and there's about 80 recruits in a division, 70 to 80 about. For the females, you have to be in an integrated division, which means that if you're a female, you are going to be with other females, and you're also going to be with other males. There are some divisions that are male only, but an integrated division would be both genders.
Can you tell me about your instructors that you had?
Yeah, we had Chief Fredericks, which I think he made senior chief shortly after I left, and he might have been promoted to Master Chief after that. He was, God, I hope he doesn't see this. He was kind of on like the shorter side, and he was just like this really like Italian, like I don't know how to explain it. But he would put the fear of God in us, but at the same time, he acted like kind of like a dad. And as you would go through basic training, it would become more like that with your RDCs. They would put the fear of God in you occasionally, but then they'd be like, okay, you know, like, and they'd come back down to earth. So he's pretty cool. There's actually a time where we all got our garments for the females. To put it lightly, they're granny panties. So they're not very flattering underwear, and everyone was very, like, not happy with it. And he said to us, what did he say? He said, remember, it's not the woman, or he's like, it's not the underwear that makes the woman sexy. It's the woman that makes the underwear sexy. I guess that was his way of trying to make us feel better about the situation. But yeah, he was a pretty funny guy. And then there was Petty Officer Coda. We were actually his first division. He had never He didn't tell us this at first. It came out towards the end. Of course, he wouldn't want us to know, but we were his first division, so I think he kind of had like a soft spot for us. And he was pretty cool as well. Yelled at us a lot, obviously, and because we were his first division, he would like get too casual sometimes, like talking to us, and then like realize that he's an RDC again. Hey, get back to work or whatever. And then Petty Officer Heron, I'm actually still friends with her on Facebook. She put the fear of God in me. I was like her special project, I think. I was constantly getting yelled at by her, and I felt like I was the only one who was getting targeted, but she basically made it so that I got through it and did it the right way, did it well. Those are the 3 RDCs that we had.
Were there any memorable experiences with your division mates?
There were so many. There's like so many that I can't even pick one out right now. God, there's so many embarrassing ones too. So I don't want to say any embarrassing stories about anybody. I don't know. I mean, the training was pretty memorable in itself. The gas chamber was the one thing that I was not looking forward to. I just didn't know how I was going to react to it. It turns out I was totally fine going through the gas chamber, while other people had like snot dripping like a mile down their face or tearing everywhere. There was also firing weapons. So we had to get trained on the 9mm handgun, and we didn't get qualified on the 12 gauge shotgun, but we got to try it out. So I went to go shoot. I had never fired a weapon before in my life. So we get the training for the 9mm handgun, and I go to fire, and they say, okay, when the lights are on, that means you can fire. When we turn the lights off, that means ceasefire. And because I'm not hearing this, like while we're testing, I'm not hearing the auditoria, I guess I didn't process it. So the lights came off and I kept firing. And I got yelled at, like, so bad. Like, he was like, if you ever do that again, like, you're out of here. And I was just like, okay, and I didn't do it again. I got qualified, so that's nice, I guess. And
was there any particularly stressful situations in basic training? And was there any particular way you handled it?
Battle stations was hard, not because it's actually a hard event. It tests you because you stay up all day, and then you go, I think like 7 o'clock at night, you go to battle stations. So they bring you to this building where it has a mock ship. I mean, it's actually pretty realistic looking. And the whole thing is that you're supposed to go through a series of challenges that you would probably encounter while being on a ship. So it starts off with simple things from like doing maintenance on SCBAs, which are self-contained breathing apparatus. So that would be like what you wear during a fire so that you can breathe. So it's like doing maintenance on that, doing inventory, doing a working party, which is just moving boxes from one end of the ship to the other. And then it escalates into general quarters, which is like if the ship is under attack, you have to get in your fire gear. There's flooding, like things like that. So you have to undergo all these challenges, basically how it would go down if it were happening on a ship. So I was actually sick that week. And if you are sick or you get injured to an extensive bit, you can get sent back in training. So I was very close to graduating. We were only about a week away, 2 weeks away maybe. And my parents and my family had already had arrangements to show up for my graduation day. I couldn't get sent back in training, and they wouldn't be able to show up and come to my graduation. I just wasn't, and I didn't want to stay in boot camp longer either. So I got sick. I think I had a fever. When I ended up going to medical eventually, I had a fever of 102. But I had it for a week, and I didn't tell anyone. And I had some really strong aspirin that they had given me at the beginning of boot camp for something unrelated. So I was taking this aspirin, and it was keeping my fever down for the whole week so I could get through all the training. Battle stations, we had the flooding portion. I had my last aspirin, and it was in my pocket, and it dissolved because of the flooding. So it's about 4 o'clock in the morning and you're just finishing up battle stations. My fever's hitting me like full force for the first time in a week, and you're tired and you're just exhausted. And I just remember just like crying, like not even because I was happy. There's like happy tears involved. But I just remember crying because I was just so miserable. And then I didn't even go to medical the next day because you get your phone call to let your family know that you passed battle stations and you're going to graduate. So I don't want to miss my phone call. So I sucked it up the whole next day, and I went to medical, and I got yelled at for having a fever for that long without doing anything about it. So that was probably the most stressful part of boot camp for me. But it could be different for everybody.
So after making it through everything, how was your graduation day?
Graduation day was great. It could have been better in the fact that I was a grad and go division. So what that means is like you graduate that day, and then that night you're getting on a plane and going to your training command. So I got to see my family for a couple hours. So that was nice, but I was just so tired. We didn't even do anything. They came to graduation. We did the graduation ceremony. Afterwards, they did Liberty Call, and that means all the families can come down and get their sailors. And I was so happy. I was just crying. And then we left, and like we went to go get food, and then we went back to like my parents' hotel room, and I just took a nap. That's what I did. I was just like, yes, I can sleep for the first time in a while. And then they brought me back to base, and that night, I think it was like 1 a.m, we got on a bus to go to the airport to get on a plane in Chicago to go to Pensacola, Florida.
So Pensacola, that was your job training?
Yes.
And what exactly did you learn while you were there?
So I was in IT, so that was my rate, and your rate is your job. So it just stood for Information Systems Technician, and it was kind of more inclusive. I mean, when you think of IT in like modern day times, like people think of people working on computers or stuff like that, and that's part true. That's part of what we did, but I was more involved in like radio and satellite communications. So honestly, the school was not that intensive. It could have been more hands-on. I think it would have been better if it was more hands-on and you're actually dealing with like cryptographic equipment and you're putting your hands on it and stuff. A lot of that training I didn't really get until I was actually at my first duty station and on the job training. But we did online courses. So we just sat at computers every day for like 4 months, and we just went through online courses. At the end of the course, you take a test, you move on to the next course. I think there were like 100 of these courses that we had to go through. And then once you finish all the courses, you're in IT. And so I didn't learn all that much from that school, and a lot of people in the Navy, it was like an experimental project that they were trying something new, and they found that it didn't really work that well. So I think they ended up going back to hands-on stuff afterwards. But so that was pretty much it. Pensacola, though, is when I got into duty sections. We had duty sections for the first time. So the way that works is, I mean, depending on how many people you have and how many watches you have, if you have a lot of people and you have very few watches, you can split it up into more sections. So I think we were in sections of 8. So that means that once every 8 days I had to show up to duty section muster, which is where they do roll call for our duty section, and then they have a list of watches that need to be taken care of, and they'll just assign them to random people in the duty section. One of the watches was the roving watch, so I actually got to rove a lot, and that was, you basically just put on, you have your uniform on, and you put on like reflective gear over your uniform, and you just walk around the base and just make sure that people aren't getting into trouble or people don't need help, or, just stuff like that. Pretty easy stuff, but I mean, that's kind of what you expect for brand new sailors that don't really know what they're doing yet. So we had the watches, and then we just had school. We had PT sometimes, physical training. We used to do it early in the mornings. They changed our schedule at some point, and then we started doing it in the afternoon. And then at one point, they just stopped doing it altogether, and I'm not really sure why, but I was okay with it. Yeah, that was pretty much A school.
Was there any memorable experiences with your classmates while you were there?
There was a lot. Yeah, actually. My roommate, she slept like the dead. So my alarm clock would go off in the morning. Her alarm clock actually would go off before mine would. And it would just go and go and go. And I would wake up because her alarm clock just keeps going. She's not even conscious. So I would get up and I would start getting ready and everything. And then it gets to a point where I go, hey, wake up, and I wake her up. And she was also my boot camp division too. So we were like pretty close. So I go, hey, wake up, and she wakes up, she gets ready. And so that's how every morning would go. And it was one day, it was a Friday. And on Friday we had uniform inspections. We would wear a different uniform. We would wear our service uniform instead of our regular blue digis. And so we would have uniform inspections. And what they would do is they would line everyone down the hallway of the compound that we were in for classes. And they would have their instructor go in front of all the ranks and look at everyone's uniform, make sure that their uniform was good to go. So this one Friday, she overslept as usual, but I also overslept. So I think I got a phone call from my instructor being like, hey, do you guys plan on showing up to school today? And we were like, oh no, we got up and we were rushed and we're putting all our uniforms on and stuff. And it was raining out that day too. So we're running down the base, and I think we didn't have our ribbons either. There was a ribbon that both of us were missing. So we had to stop at the mini necks on the way there, buy a ribbon and put it on the way over there. And then we get to the compound and we open their double doors, and everyone's lined up down the hallway just forever. And everyone just looks at us. We're the only two people that are late. And it's just oh crap. Just everyone's staring. And then we had to ask for permission to cross every single rank. It was just so humiliating. And that was probably the most memorable thing that happened there. I don't think I was ever late again after that.
So that was your A school experience?
Yes.
Did you have a C school?
No. There were a few people that had C schools. I never got assigned one. So I basically, once I finished A school, I went straight into the fleet, even though I went to shore duty. But
so after you left, you went where again?
I went to Virginia Beach, Virginia. The command that I worked at was Naval Ocean Processing Facility, or we called it NOPF for short. And that was a submarine command. So, I wasn't on a submarine or anything, but we basically were associated with submarines, and we were associated with the communications between submarines and between shore and subs. That was pretty much it there. All we did was maintain the communication lines. If the lines went down, we had to fix them and bring them back up again. And that was it in a nutshell. We also did some, we had 4 quals that were there. First one was EKMS, so that's essentially that is the cryptographic equipment and the encryptions that you need for that to work. And then Messenger. So I was actually probably better at Messenger than anything else. Messenger and EKMS. But Messenger there's a format that the Navy uses for all of their messages, and so you'd have to know the format. You would have to know how to correct them. We would do that a lot. We would get other people's messages, and we would have to look for errors in them and correct them and stuff like that. There was also tech control, so that was learning about how to actually maintain the circuits. And there's communications watch officer, which would have been the person in charge of everybody in a section. So when I worked there, most of the time we did 12-hour shifts. We would do 2 days and then 2 mid shifts, and then we would have 4 days off. There was a time where we were split up into 3 sections, so we would have an early day shift and then an evening shift and then a mid shift. But that didn't last too long for whatever reason. I think it was just we didn't have enough personnel to maintain it. But I didn't get to really do much there as far as my job, because when I first got there, or first 6 months that I was there, no, it wasn't the first 6 months. No, I was there for about almost a year. And then so I got there in February 2011. Yeah, I joined in 2010. I got there February 2011. And it wasn't until January 2011 I got selected for ASF duty, which was, I think it was Auxiliary Security Forces. And so I was basically voluntold to go be a gate guard. So I went to training for that, and it involved weapons training again. It was like a 3-week course, so we had to get qualified I got qualified on the 9mm again. Actually got qualified on the 12-gauge shotgun this time, and then the M16 rifle. We also learned a bunch of like mock takedown techniques, and then we had to do an OC spray course. So they sprayed OC spray, spray with pepper spray, and then you have to use your mock techniques and try to take down a bunch of people. You have to use a baton and beat, I don't know, pads, things like that. And then we also learned vehicle and personnel inspections. So like basically just how to inspect a vehicle for bombs, or how to inspect a person if they're trying to smuggle anything. Then we even learned like just a little bit on how to breach a room. Not really that much. I think it was just more for fun. But we learned that. And then they sent me over to Oceana Base, and it's Dam Neck and Oceana are kind of the same thing. Dam Neck is like a street or two away, and it's a smaller portion. But so I went to the Oceana precinct, and I was working there. Well, I wasn't working at the precinct. We would go to the precinct, and we would do, I think they called it guard mount. So we had to get there an hour before our shift. And that's when you basically do like a turnover with the section before. You have to get your weapon from the armory. You talk to whoever's in charge, the MA1, and he tells you. That was another thing, was, I can't remember what they're called, RAMs. And it was like, it stood for random something. It's basically different, like, I don't even know how to explain it. It's different tactics, I guess, to try to deter someone trying to get on base that's not supposed to, or something like that. So like an example of a RAM would be like at 1600, you're going to put someone at this post with an M16, you know, and they would switch it up every day. It might be a different post, it might be a different time. So it made things hard if you're someone who's trying to get onto a military base with malicious intent, it makes it hard for you to predict what's going to be at the gate. So we would figure out what our RAMs were for the day, and then basically go to our post. I think it was 8-hour watches. I was about 10 hours, actually, because I was there from noon to 10 every day for like 5 days a week. And they would change up the posts. So sometimes I'd be at the main gate at Oceana. Sometimes I'd be at the Dam Neck gate. Sometimes I'd be at the flight line. And all you really do is just check IDs. And, you know, if you have to do a RAM, like a vehicle inspection, that's like an example of a RAM, is random vehicle inspections. You would do that. There was one time, it was a Sunday evening, and it was raining, and there's no one coming on base. No one has to work. It's Sunday. So what they would also do is they would put up concrete barriers to the entrance of the gates, so that you had to kind of like but you had to kind of go in a curve in order to get to the gate. And it was kind of just to like deter you from speeding up to the gate, make you like slow down and stuff like that. So sometimes they had plastic ones. This time we had 2 concrete ones. And we're sitting in the guard shack. I'm 21 years old, and I'm the oldest one there. And we're sitting in the guard shack, and we're just kind of like chit-chatting and stuff like that. There's nothing going on. It's rainy out. We haven't seen anyone in like an hour. And all of a sudden we hear this crash. And we hear it twice. We hear like a crash, and then we hear a crash right after that. And we're like looking at each other, and we're like, what the heck was that? And we look outside, And like I'm sitting down and like the windows are like kind of up high like this. So like I can't really see anything, but I see smoke coming up. And I stand up and there's a car. And this car just flew into these concrete barriers at like 40, 45 miles an hour. Hit the first one, kept going, hit the second one. And we're all just like, we just look at each other like, what do we do? You know, like, oh my God, you know, like this is just gate guard duty. Like nothing ever happens. So immediately there's this moment of what do we do? And then people just kind of jump into action. Somebody calls basically our supervisor at the precinct, says like, you need to get over here right now. We had another guy that went out there. He ran out there to check on the driver and any passengers in the vehicle. A woman who was driving ended up knocking herself unconscious on the steering wheel, and she was bleeding everywhere, and he had to like pull her out of the car and give her CPR with blood everywhere. And after that, he had to go to the hospital and like get tested for, things like that. And it turns out that the passenger said, this is what I heard. I didn't speak to her directly, but what they were saying that they had heard from her is that that they weren't even supposed to be there. They were two civilians who were lost apparently, and they were underage. So it's important that they were underage because she had said that they were drinking beforehand too. So she said that they were drinking while they were underage, driving on top of that. And then she said, well, I was texting and I looked over and she was texting too. So they were both texting, I guess. I don't know. This is what I heard. Sounds like a whole mess of stuff. But anyways, the crash did happen. That's the fact. So that was just a nightmare. It blocked up the entire entrance to the base. So there was only one way to get in and out. And like I said, it was raining. It was also like February. So it was cold outside. And so for, I think, the next 3 or 4 hours, we all had to stand outside and direct traffic in the rain while the whole mess was taken care of. And it was just so crazy. And when we got picked up afterwards, we had a duty van that comes picks us up from the gate and brings us back to the precinct. And we're all just sitting there in the van, just like cold and wet and tired. And someone's like, well, that was fun. That was probably the worst part of ASF. But I don't know. I don't know what happened to those girls, though. Hopefully they're okay and stuff like that. But
so when you made the transition from your command where you were doing your job, sort of, was that like a command change, or did you still fall under the old command?
It was weird. I still fell under the old command. Like they still got my mail. I had to go there to get my mail. There were certain things that like I got to get out of though. I didn't have to go to my job while that was going on. So when they sent me to ASF, I didn't have to stand any watches at my job whatsoever. There might be I think command quarters or something, which was they had it once a month. And that was basically like a meeting that the command would have with each other. And the commanding officer would come out and say good job, keep up the good work, or put out some kind of information that was relevant. But that was pretty much the only thing that I was obligated to do while I was part of ASF. And then I was mostly belonging to ASF, to be honest, at that time.
And then when you left ASF, did you go back? Did you have some time back at the old command, or was it straight into a next? Oh no, I was only at ASF for 4 months, and after that, what they do too is I think they need a specific amount of people from each command. So they need 2 or 1, depending on how big your command is, I guess. They need at least 1 person from each command or from however many commands to fill these spots. Because when I went to ASF, I was working with Master at Arms, this is their job, but I was also working with other ASF people. So they were maybe an aviation rate or something this wasn't their job either, and they were just told to come here. So what would happen is, for me to leave ASF, I needed to have a relief. So that would be someone from my current command at NOPF. They had to get trained up and be ready to go to come and take my spot. And then I would go back to my command, and they would just keep cycling them out like that every few months. So how long did you stay at your old command after you got out of ASF?
I was there. I got out of ASF in about April or May in 2012. So, and I left my command in February 2013. So, like 10 months, maybe like just under a year. I was back at my other command, which I was able to get fully qualified by then. So I only had like EKMS or Messenger when I left to go to ASF. Went to ASF, came back, and then I was able to work on my tech control qual and my CWO qual, Communications Watch Officer. So I got qualified in everything. And after you get qualified and everything, like, you basically just go to work, you know. Now you're not really training for anything. You know everything that you need to do. You just show up and do your job and go home. They are always, like, pushing you to try to excel in other areas. So one thing that we got was we had the information dominance program established at our command. And this was for a warfare pin. We have a bunch of different warfare pins in the Navy. If you go on a ship, there's the enlisted surface warfare something or other. I honestly can't remember what it stands for. We call it ESWAS though. So that's the qualification, or that's the warfare pin that you're trying to get. And it basically says that you kind of know a little bit of everything that needs to be done on a ship. For the information dominance warfare pin, it was basically saying you are, you're good at your job. You know, you're good at knowing things, different things about information dominance. And the way that they work it too is it's also partly structured around what your command does. So not only did I have to learn about information systems and stuff like that and how they work, I also had to learn certain things about like submarines, like that they travel in boxes, for example. That's like a really simple way to put it. But it was kind of cool because it was neat to learn about submarines, I guess. But once you do that, you have to take a test. So you learn all these things. You take a test. You have to pass the test. Once you pass the test, you have to do a board. So you basically, I was with my supervisors and then a few of like the higher enlisted people and officers in the command. And I boarded with one other woman. She was, I think she was a second class at the time. She might have been a first class. So she might have been E6. Her name was Ashley Smith. And we both were the first people in our command to get this warfare pin. So it was like pretty exciting for us. And we would go to this board and they would then ask us questions. Kind of the same questions that are on the test, but more extensive, and there's a lot more questions that were on the test. And they would go around the room and they'd all ask us questions and we'd have to answer them right. And you have to answer at least 80% of the questions right in order to get qualified. So I just made 80%. So that was good. And it was also my last day at the command because I had already started it. I mean, once you start doing the warfare qualification, if you don't finish and you go to another command, you have to start from square one. So I didn't want to have to do that. And they said it'll look good if you go to a ship and you already have a warfare pin. So I busted my butt for like 3 or 4 months learning all this stuff. And I had checked out of the command already. I was actually on leave taking my board. And once I took my board, see you later, you know, I went on leave and then transferred to my next command after that.
So after you had done all that, where did you end up?
After I did all that, like I said, I went home on leave. I was there for about 3 weeks. And then I went to Japan. That was a pain to travel to Japan. It was, I left Virginia and my command that I had just left was like telling me, like, you know, just when you get to, because you have to go to Seattle first, the Seattle airport, and then you leave there to go internationally to like the Pacific, whatever. So they're like, when you get to Seattle, you know, just ask them if you go to the SVO and they'll hook you up with like a hotel room, this, that, and the other. They'll give you a ride to the hotel. It'll be on the Navy's, you know, whatever. Just, you'll get reimbursement when you get to your command. I said, okay, So it was a rough day because I think my first flight was delayed, which meant my connecting flight, I had to get it. It just spiraled like that. So my first flight was delayed. I think like a wheel or something popped on the plane, like something really strange. And so then it was a matter of trying to get like space A like the rest of the way, even though I'm like on orders and should have a seat. I would get to the next plane and be like, I don't know if I can get on this plane or not. Like, we'll see. Like, I might get to Japan on time or I might not. So it ended up working out, even though it was extremely stressful the entire time trying to figure everything out. And then I got to Seattle and I'm like, finally, and I go to the SVO and I'm like, hey, I'm here. Like, I have orders to leave for Japan tomorrow morning. And they're like, great. And they're like, we'll take your sea bag. And I'm like, okay, thinking that, like, we're going to get in a van and like go to a hotel. No, they took my sea bag and they took everybody else's sea bag and they put it in a room and they said, you can sleep here for the night. So that's what I did. I shared a couch with some other strange, like, female service member. She like took one half of the couch and I took the other, and I just slept in the airport overnight. And then we all got up the next day, and well, I won't say got up. I feel like I didn't even sleep that night, but we all went and got on the flight. It was a military flight, or it was a MAC flight. So we all got on the plane. Surprisingly, I slept pretty well on the plane. So that was good, because we stopped in Korea actually before we even got to Japan. So it was a little bit longer, probably like, I want to say it was around 13 hours. And then I got to Japan and I got off the plane and we were at Yokota Air Force Base, got off the plane and I went through whatever, it's the military. They just point me in one direction and I go. So, I just followed whatever processes I needed to do. They tell you to get on a bus and we're going to bring you to the base. And like, I have no idea what I'm expecting. I have no idea who's supposed to meet me once I get to the base. I have no idea. So I get on this bus and I go to the base and I get off the bus and I'm like, now what? Like, I'm here now, and I guess it was my chief at the time, like, picked me up, but like, I didn't know what he was going to look like. I don't know if he knew what I looked like, so it was just really, like, I think he just asked me, like, are you May? Because I'm a girl, I guess, I don't know. There's only a few of us on the bus, so that's how that happened, and they brought me to the ship, and then all you get is your rack. After a while you can get a barracks room. After, I think, 5 months, you have to be on the ship 5 months so you can get a barracks room. But for the first 5 months, you are just on the ship. You live on the ship. You get a tiny little rack. You can open the rack, put all your stuff in it, and that's all your living space. So that was like thinking back to P days, like adjusting, that was like another P days. Like, just that first week was just really difficult to adjust to again. But after that, Japan was awesome.
So what ship were you assigned to?
I was assigned to the USS Blue Ridge. There's two flagships in the Navy, so it's one of those two flagships, and it had the 7th Fleet Admiral was attached to it, or we just carry him around basically and bring him from country to country.
So what was a typical day like on board?
Typical day, it depends. If you're in port, you would wake up after I got a barracks room, I would wake up with, my roommates and stuff. Everybody had to be at the ship at like 7. So, of course, I'm like living with 3 other girls and like everyone's like fighting for the shower and stuff like that so that everybody could be there at 7. But you show up at 7, you muster. So you do like the roll call, make sure everyone's here. You go over the plan of the day, talk about what needs to be done for the day. If there's any information that needs to be put out, they do that. And then afterwards, it's kind of like, now you know what you need to do, go do it. So like sometimes it would be painting, sometimes it would be antenna maintenance. This is like, we would do like a lot of busy work while we were in port because it was all about making sure that the ship is maintained and making sure that the ship can like run at its best. We're already in port, so we don't really need to communicate with anyone from the ship. So we wouldn't really work with comms or anything like that. But we would do a lot of cleaning, we would do a lot of painting, just basic maintenance stuff. And then when we would get ready for inspections. If we had any inspections coming up, it would be all about doing whatever you need to do to be ready for that inspection. If it was underway, we would be, and while you're in port, everybody works pretty much the same hours. They work from like 7 to 4, or like you might get out early, you might have to stay a little later. And that's like Monday through Friday. And then you have your duty sections. So if you have duty, like I explained earlier in A school, it's the same concept. You know, you're on duty for that day, except when you're on duty on the ship, you can't leave the ship. So like when everyone gets to go home at 4 o'clock, if you're on duty, you have to stay there the entire night. So, I mean, luckily you have a rack already there for you so that you can sleep in it when you're not on watch. But then once you go underway, it's everybody's separated into 2 or 3 sections. If you're in 2 sections, we call it port and starboard. So you're working 12-hour shifts. And that'll be like 12-hour, you know, the day shift and then the mid shift. And then you have, if we were in 3 sections, you'd have, like I explained earlier, like the kind of the day, the evening, and then the mid shifts again. And we would have to actually muster, I think, no, it wasn't 3 times a day. We would only have to muster in the morning. So for the evening shift, that kind of sucked because they had to like actually get, even though they weren't going to work, they still had to get out of bed to go to muster and hear whatever they had to say and then go back to bed or go back to doing whatever they're doing. And you would do, that's when we would do like comm stuff. So that's when things are like probably actually breaking and you actually have to fix them. You have to load key mat. You have to, like what else? I mean, honestly, if nothing's really broken, we didn't really do that much. We keep up with the logs and stuff. Messages, if there's messages coming, there's always messages coming through. And it's really chaotic when you're underway. There's just messages after message after message. Whoever's on message duty, like, just is they're in a nightmare because it's just so much to keep up with. But there's that. We would have a lot of different things happen. You'd have flight quarters a lot. We had a landing pad for helicopters. So we would have flight quarters. And like, even though we weren't a part of it, there were certain things that you couldn't do during flight quarters. So if you weren't a part of flight quarters, you couldn't be around the flight deck. If flight quarters was going on, you weren't allowed to smoke on the smoke deck. There's just a whole bunch so you'd always have to hear like flight quarters going on. We were also a part of it, being comms. So we were a part of flight quarters. When flight quarters was about to happen, we actually had to do like a whole process to make sure that comms was good between the ship and the helos. And then what else? If there's a man overboard drill, which there usually was every single day, that is when you practice for if someone falls over the ship. So they'll do it at a random time during the day, call man overboard, and you have 7 minutes for everyone in the ship to go and muster with their divisions and basically do a head count and say everyone's here, and then you have to send that stuff to the bridge or whoever accounts for that. So if you don't do it within 7 minutes, it's kind of like a hit on us, and like the XO gets angry and stuff like that. But man overboard drills, general quarter drills. So I was in a repair locker. So if there was a general quarter drill, meaning like let's pretend that the ship's being like fired at or something, I would have to go to my repair locker, or it's like kind of just like a little closet, and it has all the gear that you need for firefighting. So I think, yeah, my repair locker was 1 Alpha. So everyone else that was in repair locker 1 Alpha like had a job. You had people who were active firefighters, usually like the MMs or like the machinist mates, people that work in the engine room and damage control and stuff like that. And then you had the phone talker. So this was the person that was like, there's DC Central, which is like where you report everything if it has something to do with damage control. So you'd have the phone talker, and they're sitting there with like a radio, and they're communicating everything that's going on with our repair locker back to DC Central and vice versa. And then you have, like, I was a boundaryman a lot of the time, so I would just get in firefighting gear, and then they would say, these are the boundaries. Don't let anyone come in this area, because that's where we're simulating like a fire or a flood's happening. which is a pretty easy job. You just stand outside the door and say, you can't come in here, But there was a time where they wanted me to do like not actual firefighting, but be like a hoseman. And I didn't know, you have coveralls, which we would wear underway. And then you have steamers, which are like a heavier, like more flame resistant, coverall, which is like what the enginemen would wear and stuff because they work in that environment where they could get burned. And then you have like the actual firefighting gear. And what I didn't know is that if you are wearing, most of the time we didn't have to wear the full firefighting gear. They would say put on the steamers and then put on your SCBA or whatever and you're good to go. Put on your boots, you're good to go. This time they said we want you to wear full firefighting gear. I'm already wearing coveralls, and so most of the time I just go from coveralls, put steamers on over the coveralls. So when they said full firefighting gear, I thought they meant coveralls, steamers, and then firefighting gear. But if you're going to put on full firefighting gear, you don't need the steamers because it'll make you overheat, which is exactly what happened. So I wore all of these things and I went to go like fight this fire, and I just started like having like a panic attack because I just like couldn't breathe. And my master chief like looked at me. I like had the mask on and everything. You just see my eyes. And he's like, are you okay? And I'm like, no. And he's like, get the hell out of here. And I'm like, okay, And I go back. He's a really cool guy. Like he was someone who like stood up for me a lot and like really had my back when I needed it. So like, I knew he wasn't like being mean when he said to get out of here. Like he was actually worried about my well-being. But so that happened, and I ran back to the repair locker and I just started ripping everything off, and they had to like send me to medical. Like someone had to actually bring me to medical because I couldn't even walk. Like it was so much. So after that, they said, well, you're not doing that anymore. So they wanted to make me a plotter, which is this is also in a repair locker, is that they have a map of the ship, like a big map on the wall. But there's so many different decks and levels to a ship that you like actually turn the page and it's like another level of the ship. So what you would do is when like damage or when a general quarter drill is going on, the 1MC, which is like the intercom system in the ship, is telling you like fire, 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 fire in compartment, this, and it's telling you where the fires are or where the flood is or where whatever casualty is happening. And as a plotter, you're supposed to listen to this, and you're supposed to find that compartment on the maps and mark it down. And you just have to, honestly, it's a good job for someone who has like a lot of attention to detail and can deal with a lot going on at once. Because I had a hard time with it, to be honest. It's just, there is, when you have a general quarters drill too, it's not just one isolated incident. It's like, oh, a missile hit this side of the ship. Oh, and then there's a fire on this side. And then there's flooding over here. And you have to mark everything that's going on. And it's just one right after the other. So it's really stressful. It's fun, but it's stressful.
So besides going on underways, did you ever deploy with the ship?
Well, yeah, I mean, I wouldn't really call it a deployment, or at least everybody else who'd been on a real ship, that's what they would always say, would say it wasn't a deployment, because we wouldn't be out to sea very long. We'd be out to sea for about, I think 12 to 15 days is maybe the longest we were out to sea at one time, and then we would pull into a port somewhere. So the common places, we went to Korea several times. We went to Australia, 3 different parts of Australia. And for that was, Australia was part of a operation, Talisman Sabre. So we would have a lot of actual like reservists come on board the ship. It would be like their 2 weeks annual training. We'd have a ton of reservists come on. We would call them riders. So anyone who wasn't like a permanent service member attached to the Blue Ridge, we called a rider. We would have them come on, and we were actually working with the Australian Navy as well, and maybe the Army, Australian Army. I'm not sure. Oh yeah, we were working with the Australian Army. So we would have them come on board as well. We had some Australians come on board, and they would set up like a simulated war, kind of like I don't even know how to describe it, but I was on a Tiger team at that point, and Tiger team was basically, it was just like a temporary, like thrown together team that they would put, and you had whatever your main job was, you're not doing that. And kind of like how ASF, like I stopped doing my main job to go to ASF. So they took me out of my division and whole bunch of other people out of their divisions to create this Tiger team. And we were still doing IT related stuff, but it wasn't in the same context. So because we were getting all these writers on board, we had to set up a whole bunch of computer workstations for them so that they could go on. I don't honestly know what they did. It was a simulated war, and whatever they did in their rooms or on the computers, I don't really know. All I know is that when their computers broke, we had to fix them. And so that's what we did. So we ran cable all over the ship. Like, I don't even know how many, like probably like hundreds of feet of cable just ran throughout the ship. And we created a ton of workstations, probably a couple hundred workstations. So we would just take computers that were in storage and we would set them up all over the ship, make sure that they had network connectivity and stuff like that. And we would do this. It would take us a couple weeks to set it up. And then once we got it set up, all the riders would come on board. We would check them in, and then we would give them accounts. That was another thing I did. I made accounts for all of the riders, and then they'd be there for about a week or two. And any troubles that they had with their computers, we would just go and fix. Your mouse isn't working. Okay, go figure it out type thing. Internet not working. Things like that. So it wasn't really like, I don't know, exciting, I guess, if you want to say that. But we did go to Australia because we were working with the Australians. We spent a couple days, maybe like a week in Darwin. We spent a couple days in Sydney. And we spent a while in Cairns. The only thing that sucked about Tiger Team, well, Tiger Team didn't have to do watches, so that was nice. So you got to work like not Monday through Friday. If you're underway, you're working. But you got to work like a regular like day shift, like how you would do in port. So you didn't have any crazy watches or anything like that. But when you got to port, everybody else, it'd be like a 3-section or 4-section duty section. So if you didn't have duty, which would be 3 or 4 days out of the week, or 2 or 3 days in a row, you could just go and do whatever you want. You didn't have to actually work. Whereas Tiger Team was the complete opposite. Like, we had to be there. So even though we got to go to Australia, everybody else got a lot more free time than the Tiger Team did. We could go out after like 4, but then you have to be back to the ship by midnight. So there's like only so much you can do, especially when like the sun starts to go down and stuff. But we did that. We did UFG, which was another same type of operation, except we worked with the South Koreans. And we simulate, like, if North Korea were to attack South Korea or the U.S., it's basically simulating if, like, a war like that were to happen. And so we went to Busan for a couple weeks, and Qinghai, I think? Qinghai? Yeah, I don't remember. We were only there for, like, a day or two. But we went to Busan a lot. And it's the same thing with the South Koreans, same kind of exercise, same Tiger Team deal. And then we would have other ports that we would go to in between. So even though we weren't having an operation or anything, we would go to Malaysia for a couple days. We went to Indonesia, Singapore. The next year we went to Thailand and Hong Kong. And it would just be like a couple days in each place, but that's why like the salty sailors always say it's not a real ship and it's a cruise ship, basically. But yeah, that was pretty much it for that. Except there's also if we were underway, we had like certain things that we would do to try to like, I don't know, make it more interesting or fun or like boost morale. So we would have Steel Beach picnics. So that would basically be like, you'd have a picnic on the main deck. They'd be like hot dogs and hamburgers, and everybody, like, grills are up there. Everybody's cooking and stuff. And if you're not on watch, like, you can come, even if you are on watch, it's like have someone save your spot for 10 minutes while you go up and get a hamburger and come back down, you know? But, so that was, Steel Beach picnics were fun. We actually watched a movie on the main deck. They, like, set up a projector and they projected it on one of the towers on the ship, and it was at night, and I mean, like, the stars are unbelievable in the middle of the ocean, you know, like, you can see everything. So it was really cool to, like, watch a movie. It was like being at the drive-in, except on a ship. And then there was the shellback ceremony. So when we crossed the equator, we did the crossing the line ceremony, which is, I don't want to say it's hazing. The military is trying to steer away from using that word, but it's kind of like hazing. But you agree to it. So I think that's the difference. You can choose not to do the shellback ceremony, and in that case, no one's going to bother you. But if you do choose to do it, you're considered a WOG before the ceremony, and then once you go through the initiation, then you are considered a shellback. And then the next year, you can initiate the WOGs and stuff like that. So,
besides the occasional picnic, what was the normal food like on the ship?
You know, you got used to it, I'll say that much. And I hate saying anything bad about the Navy food because I know the CSs, which are the cooks, like, work really hard and they get really butthurt when you talk bad about their food. The chicken cordon bleu was, like, nothing to be impressed by, but it was, like, easily the best food there. And whenever they had chicken cordon bleu, whenever they were serving it, you're like, oh my god, yes, like, chicken cordon bleu day. You get, like, really excited. We had Fridays were called Freedom Friday, and they would just serve pizza and fries and hamburgers and hot dogs. The pizza I would stay away from. It just never looked good. It always looked like really burnt, to be honest. You're better off with a cheeseburger. Taco Tuesday was another one, so they would just serve tacos. I mean, they would just give you lunch meat, or not lunch meat, but they would give you, like, ground beef, and then you could put whatever you wanted in it. You could have a soft shell, you can have a hard shell, I don't know. Put it in a bowl. They didn't care. There were a few times we did, like, special things. We did Mongolian barbecue, and that everybody really liked except for me. And it's not because I had a problem with the food, but they did every order, like, as an individual order. So you got to tell them exactly what you wanted and your Mongolian barbecue. And when you do that for, like, I don't know, 800 sailors, it takes a long time. So I was more of a fan of, like, just get in line and just take what they give you and get out of the way so that the next person can get their food. But everybody else was all about the Mongolian barbecue. I couldn't stand it. And then they also did birthday dinners. So if you they would do, like, the month of June or the month of May, you know, like, if you had a birthday in the month of May, we'll have a birthday dinner for you, and we'll serve you crab and steak. And we had a band on, because there's MUs, musicians in the Navy, and I guess because it's the 7th Fleet Admiral ship, we had, like, an actual band, like, Navy band, and they would perform at, like, events, like, when we'd have, like, parties for the Admiral, which we never saw the Admiral, by the way. Like, he was partying with higher-ups in other countries, and we were just doing all of the work for the ship. I think I only saw him once. But so the band was there for those events, but they would have the band come down for the birthday dinners and, like, play in the galley, I don't know, whatever music. There was, and then we would get ice cream sometimes. There's always a joke that, like, if you're a sailor and you're underway and they start serving crab or lobster and steak and ice cream, that you're about to get bad news. It's like, you know, they're, like, trying to warn me, like, don't get excited about getting steak and lobster because you're about to get, like, your deployment's about to be extended or something. So that was always a joke. But, I mean, for the birthday dinners, they just like to put on a nice dinner. We also had, like, I never went to this. We had talent shows. I lived in the berthing underneath the galley, though, which is where all the talent shows were happening. So I'd be in my rack trying to sleep for watch or something, and I just hear people, like, singing and stuff above me, like, doing their talent show stuff. It was the same thing with the WOG ceremony. The night before, they have a WOG talent show. I don't even know if I should be, like, saying this. It's, like, secrets of the Navy. But they have a WOG talent show, and it's kind of a trick. It's kind of a mean trick. Like, no matter how good your talent is, you're going to get booed because you're a WOG. So, like, people go up there with these axes. Not only do they get booed, they get, like, sprayed with, like, hoses and stuff, you know? So you would go on the main deck and do that. And, like, some of them I felt bad for. I was like, wow, that was, like, a really good show. But, no, it's tradition to boo them anyways. And then we had game nights as well. So one that was, like, really popular was bingo. We didn't have it for very long. Like, they had just started doing it, like, as I was on my way out the door. But it got really popular because there was, like, actual cash prizes and stuff. So I won, like, $200 once at bingo. But it's funny, too, because the way that the bingo was, it's like, this is not, like, bingo that you imagine with, like, your grandma or something, you know, like, I mean, maybe it is. I don't know. I don't think I've been to, like, real bingo except for on the ship. But whenever someone would win a bingo, no one is congratulating them. Everyone's just yelling at them because they're upset that they didn't win bingo. So I imagine if they had bingo in prison, that's kind of what it would be like. I don't know.
How did you stay in touch with your family while you were on the ship?
We had internet. Sometimes we didn't. I mean, really, it was on us. Like, we were the comms people, so if the internet went down, it was either our fault or it was our job to fix it. So sometimes the internet would go down, though, and then we would get hell from everybody else on the ship because they couldn't use the internet. That was probably, like, the most, like, stressful part was the fact that everyone else had access to internet, so when they didn't have access, they knew exactly who to get mad at. So I would use Facebook, mostly, and then also we could dial off the ship, and I don't remember, I mean, there was, like, you had to put in, like, a country code and this, that, and the other thing, but you could effectively dial off the ship, and I would have to do it. I usually did it on, like, mid-watches, because the time difference between Japan and the States is, like, 13 hours, so when it's daytime here, it's, like, in the middle of the night there, and vice versa. So if I was on a mid-watch and there was nothing going on, I'd call my family because I knew that they'd be up and it's the middle of the day here. So.
What did you think of your officers and your higher enlisted?
I think that really depended. There were people who had your back no matter what, and you knew that you could rely on. And then there were people that you could tell were just trying to get promoted, you know? Like, not really doing the right thing for your sake or for anyone's, you know, just not doing the right thing in general because they just want to look good to their higher-ups so that they'll get promoted and stuff like that. So that became frustrating because you're relying on your higher-ups to kind of have your back, and if you don't have a voice, like, you need them to be your voice. And if they're not going to be your voice because they're too concerned with their own motives of moving up, then you're stuck, you know, like, so that would get frustrating. It was like that a lot on the ship. People will say that about the Blue Ridge. It's a very political ship, and it's because that is a ship where a lot of people get promoted, especially, like, high-ranking, like, like E7, maybe, like, E6 to E9. That's where, like, it really, like, jumpstarts their career, and they can really just, like, kind of shoot up to the next rank, where it might be harder to do it in other commands. So because people know that, because they know that there's a good chance of them getting promoted, I think a lot of them end up, like, compromising their values to try to get ahead. So that is why I think the Blue Ridge is very political. I didn't have too many problems when I was in Virginia Beach. They actually took really good care of me down there. And that's the thing that you'll see about the military is that, but it's not always worth it. Sometimes people will be like, don't get out of the military, like, your next command could be great, you know? And it's true, like, I've seen that there are, like, great commands, and then there are commands where, like, you're just like, oh my god, like, this sucks, you know? Not that my entire experience on the Blue Ridge sucked. Like, there was a lot of good times. I missed the ship sometimes, but there was also a lot of stuff that, like, it left a lot to be desired. But my chain of command at my first command was, like, I remember I was sick one day. Like, I had a cold, but it was, like, really bad. It was, like, just pounding my sinuses, you know? and I just didn't feel good. And they're like, well, go to sick call and see if you get SIQ, And I went, and I didn't get SIQ because I just had a cold. I didn't have anything like really wrong with me apart from that. So I didn't get SIQ, and I came back to work, and I said I didn't get SIQ. Now I'm just here to work. And like my first class was just like, you know what, like we're good without you. Like you should just go home, like just get some rest and stuff. And I was like, okay, great, like she let me go home early so I can get some rest. And then like not only did she let me go home, but she showed up like later in the day, like bringing like snacks and soup and stuff like to my barracks room, like, hey, I just want to see if you're okay and stuff like that. And it was just like really nice that she didn't have to do that, but she did anyways. Whereas, like, if you're on the ship, and I get the ship is, like, a lot higher paced and stuff, but in all honesty, there are times where it's like, do we really need this person? Well, I don't know. It's hard to say, because also it's like if you give someone, like, some special treatment, then everyone else is going to expect it. So, I mean, there is a balance. But even when I left Virginia, like, they all wanted to have, like, a going away thing with me, and, like, they were there for my pinning ceremony, and it was just, like, people were like crying, I was like, wow, people are really going to miss me and stuff like that. Whereas when I left the Blue Ridge, it was just like, all right, see you later, like, bye. So I don't know. It's just, you definitely see differences depending on where you go, what the motive is and stuff. As far as like the higher ups, I can't say anything completely good or bad. Like I saw both. So
was the Blue Ridge your last station?
Yes. Well, I mean, yeah, it was my last duty station, but I did have to out-process. You can't out-process overseas. So they sent me back. They sent me back to Seattle, or I don't even remember what it was called. But you had to go to Seattle, and then it was somewhere in Washington to out-process. So I flew back from Japan over to Washington, and then I was there for about a week. And all it was really was just checking out of different buildings for like your medical records, your dental records, they would do like a final, I don't even want to say like physical, but something like that. And then getting like your DD-214, going through all the admin processes. And it was just, it felt so long. Like I felt like I was there forever because I was so jet lagged coming back from Japan that I just wanted to sleep during the day. But they were very strict about, even though I had no job. There was nothing for me to do there. It was just go to your appointments. And then if you're not at appointments, like go do anything you want, just be on base. So I had no real job, but they wouldn't let you go to your barracks room if it was before 1 p.m. So I would have like nothing to do. Like I have an appointment in like 3 hours. I just want to take a nap, but no, you weren't allowed to go to your barracks room. And I mean, it probably didn't used to be a rule, but someone probably slept through their appointments or something, and now it's a rule. But it felt like it was forever. Luckily enough, I had a friend from the Blue Ridge. She got out before I did, and she ended up moving to Washington. So when I got there to out-process, like she picked me up from the airport, and we went to Seattle like for a night or something because Seattle was right there. You just had to get on the ferry to go there. And we hung out for that week, and it was great to because she had left like probably 6 months prior to me. So it was cool to see her again and stuff like that. But yeah, and then I remember them saying like, oh, you got your ticket to leave. You leave Friday. And it's like, yeah, I leave Friday. And then I got my ticket. First of all, 7:00 Friday morning, they check you out of the barracks. You have to have all your stuff, and then you go and get your DD-214. And once you check out of the barracks, like you're no longer the Navy's problem. You're not, you're out. You're getting out. I don't want to say they don't care about you anymore. They don't really care about you anymore. So I checked out. I have all my stuff. It's 7:00 in the morning. I go to the admin office to get my DD-214 and to get my plane ticket. And I get my plane ticket, and it's like departure time, 23:59. I was like, really? I'm leaving Friday, 1 minute before Saturday. So I didn't know what to do for like the next 12 to like 18 hours or whatever it was. So my friend, she picked me up with all my stuff, and I went, and I'm still jet lagged at this point, so all I want to do is sleep. So I went to a motel. We went to some like $45 a night motel, and just for like a couple hours, like just paid for it just so I could take a nap for a couple hours until like later on that night, I think like 7 o'clock or something, she brought me to the airport so that I could get checked in and everything and get on my flight. Then I got on my flight and we're flying all night, and I had like 2 connecting flights after that, and I'm wearing my dress blues as well. So midnight flight, leave, get a connecting flight in like Detroit or something, and then the next flight was in Virginia, I think. And then after that, it was from Virginia to White Plains, New York, where my dad picked me up. And the whole time I'm like begging him, like, please don't invite anyone over. Like, I'm really tired. I've been traveling all night. Like, I just want to go to sleep. It's like, oh yeah, yeah. And we get home, and who's there? Like, my entire family, like, extended. And I'm like, and, they do like the whole surprise thing, which is really nice. Like, don't get me wrong, I was happy to see everyone, but I just wish it was under different circumstances. But yeah, so leaving there was, leaving the Navy was just as rocky as going in, I guess.
What did you do in the days and weeks afterward?
I didn't do much. I ended up getting a job at UPS in... I don't remember when I started working at UPS. I think I started working there at the end of April. I got home at the end of March. So for about a month, I guess, I wasn't working and I wasn't going to school yet. I had plans to go to school. I was still trying to get those together for the fall. But I did a lot of pacing. I was so used to just like the high-paced environment for so many years that like after I got out and I was home and I didn't have anything to do, I was just like, what do I do? Like, what happens now? My family's like, just relax, like just sit down and like watch TV. I was like, I don't know, So eventually I learned to calm down though. And I started working at UPS. I worked there pretty much full time for about 4 months. And then I quit because I was about to start school. And I started school full time in the fall of 2015 at Western Connecticut State University. And I'm still going there now. Now a junior. And see, after that, I stayed pretty much unemployed. I did like little employment opportunities with the school. I was a note taker at one point, so I got like $10 an hour, which was like 2 hours a week. So it wasn't like anything crazy. And then I didn't start working again until last August. And now I work at an escape room. I won't go into too much detail on that. But it's a fun job, and it brings in money besides the GI Bill, and they're pretty good about letting me focus on my schoolwork and stuff while I continue to go to school. And that was pretty much it.
Did you make any, besides the woman in Washington that was your friend, did you keep any other friendships that are...
Oh yeah. Not like, I've had a few friends. I had one friend from the ship come visit me. I've had, one friend that I was friends with. He was in my boot camp brother division. So you have your division, your brother division, and they're not your division, but they do everything with you. So we just call them brother division. But he was in my brother division. He was in A school with me when I was stationed in Virginia Beach. He was stationed at Norfolk, so we hung out a lot in Virginia. And then after I went to Japan, kind of parted ways for a little bit. He did his thing on the Stout, but he came to visit me for a couple days. And then, let's see, I have a friend from Japan, and she got out before I did, but her husband was still in, and he was still in Japan. So I left Japan before she did. He's getting out now, and they just got back to the States like 2 weeks ago or something like that, which is really nice because now there's like not that huge time zone. Like we could only talk to each other either really late at night or really early in the morning. But yeah, I kept in touch with a lot of people, actually, mostly through Facebook. Sometimes I'll talk to people on the phone or through text message. Mostly Facebook, though.
How did your military experience influence your thinking about, war and the military in general, especially being a woman in the military?
Well, I don't know what my feelings are about war. It's such a complicated subject. I definitely, it does give you perspective, though, because you see things from both sides. I've been a civilian and I've also been a service member. So when people say, I don't know, I feel like there's a lot of people that don't know what they're talking about in regards to the military. And, you don't really hear it well, I hear brainwashing a lot. A lot of people say brainwashing. And I mean, call it what you want, but we're still people. And I have my own opinions. I'm sure the Navy and my military experience has shaped me a little bit differently than how I was, but I think I'm still true to who I am. And so I think if anything, all it really did was, in terms of war, it gave me perspective. And it's just, remember that service members are not robots. They're human beings, and they sacrifice a lot, and they deserve support, and people, I've had people tell me too, that I support the war, I support killing people, and I was a part of killing people, and I'm like, I worked on computers. I guess I don't know. I don't see how I was a part of killing people, but, yeah, I don't know. I think it's just, I don't know. And maybe if I never joined the military, I would agree with them. I don't know. But I'm just saying, what I know now, what I've experienced, I feel like I'm able to see things, I think, more clearly, having both perspectives.
And how about your thinking about the military in general?
The military, I'll say this. When I joined, I thought the military was going to be a lot more organized than it really is. And that's, not to knock it or anything. Bottom line is we get things done. It doesn't matter how you get there, we get there, And so I guess that's the respectable side about the military. I see a lot of times people make things bigger deals than what they really are. And I just think back to being in the military and being like, that's not a big deal. That was a big deal. Whatever happened on that day was a big deal, but you're treating it the same way, And so, I mean, you got to give people in the military props for, I guess, being able to handle the stressful things that they had to handle. And, coming out on the other side, kind of, I think you have more appreciation and stuff for a lot of things. You're grateful, and you can see what's in. I think you can see the bigger picture a lot when you're. I think, I don't know, but I feel like I see the bigger picture most of the time. I try not to get wrapped up in the small things, because it could be worse, and it has been. So
you would say your military experience has affected how you live your life now?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, before I joined, like I said, I was flunking out of college. I had no sense of direction whatsoever. And they, for lack of a better term, put a boot in my ass. And, I got disciplined, and I felt more confident in myself. I don't think I had confidence before. And respect for myself, and I think just boot camp in general was graduating boot camp was a huge milestone for me, because it took a whole bunch of things that I didn't think I could do, and then I did them. And so ever since then, I will get something that is just, you look at it and you go, wow, that's scary. Like, that's a challenge right there, you know? But then I think back and I'm like, well, I did that thing that I didn't think I could do, and I did that other thing. And so, I mean, it's definitely helped to build my confidence and give me ambition and drive, and to not, like, be afraid to take on new challenges. In fact, I think now I bite off more than I can chew, like, all the time. And then I regret it. I don't actually regret it, but I drive myself crazy with it. But I mean, like, now, like, I've been on the dean's list, like, ever since I started going back to school. It's like 3 semesters in a row, and it's just like, you wouldn't think that I'm, like, the same person that I was 5 years ago, or 6, 7, I don't even remember, 7 years ago. Yeah, so.
Is there anything else that you'd like to add that hasn't been covered yet?
No, I don't think so.
I'd like to thank you for your service and also for taking the time to be interviewed today.
Thank you.